All right, our next assignment, assignment 5. We also want to think about composition for this assignment, but it is almost the polar opposite from the effective object project. Instead of being no background, this is all about background, and instead of being forced to use the native format of your camera to make the composition, you are forced to build your own composition out of multiple exposures, at least 3, but for the best results, I would say no fewer than 5. So here you see the raw exposures. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, here's 5. Maybe a 6th one in there too. And they're taking what's called a panoramic. And we're going to learn how to tile those together into one seamless image.
And we cannot use iPhone for this.
And you cannot use any kind of panoramic setting in your camera, because all those built-in tools, they do a good job, but they downsample it to a very low resolution. So they are not printable. We are going to first learn how to do it by hand, and then learn how to do it through Photoshop using automation, and learn what the advantages and disadvantages are of both. So we're not trying to make this needlessly hard, but we are going to take individual tiled exposures. And it's tricky because you need the sky to be the same color in all of them, right? You need your exposure levels to be the same color in all of them. And if you have an SLR, this is a good assignment to use manual settings on or program settings on. Once you figure out what the best exposure is, what the best shutter speed is, what the focal point is, it's better to keep it even across all exposures because you'll need them all to match. Then we will process them. And we're going to be learning some new and inventive ways of processing creatively, because once we've controlled the exposure and the composition, then we really can play with color and make it more imaginative and interesting. Here's another example. Notice how both of these, each student has made a very strong choice of their subject matter to fight against the horizontal horizon, right? So in this site, you have things that cut diagonally across the horizon. And here the horizon line is flat at the back, but cut by all these trees and then cropped off. But you also have this shoreline of the river that's more interesting, and you have the reflections. It's tough to make an interesting composition with the landscape. You know, these panoramic compositions can be very challenging. You can also, you're not limited to doing horizontals. You are also allowed to do verticals. And you still want at least 3, but optimal 5 to tile together. Now what's fun about verticals is you'll see the distortion of the cone of vision much quicker in a vertical. Because we have 2 eyes set side by side, we're used to a peripheral vision that's wider, not tall. So when you make it the sphere of the vision match the width, as you do in a vertical panoramic, it looks very distorted to you, and yet is perfectly descriptive. So I like vertical panoramics. This student went a different way with playing with the composition and really tried to make it as symmetrical as possible, and really relies on that kind of curved distortion you get from multiple exposures, taking pictures from different angles and seaming them together. This was a pretty ambitious student that wanted to get a shot of San Antonio at night. And I show this because it's really helpful to just change your elevation for this project. When you're just standing on the ground and you're looking at the ground is always going to fade away in the middle of your field of vision. And not much is going to break from that horizon line. But if you aim low by getting up higher and looking down, or if you aim higher and have more sky than ground, you can make more interesting compositional choices. Like this, here the horizon line is very, very low. There's a few too many verticals. There's a lot of trees there, but not much you can do about that. but the verticality and all these little peekaboos of the sky engage the eye movement in a much stronger way. I love this strong play of foreground and background. So the other requirement of this is that you need to shoot in infinite focus. So in the last project, we really opened our aperture wide. We had low f-stops and played with really narrow depths of field. Here we want to do the opposite. We want to stop our aperture down. So f16 minimum. If you can go up to f20, f22, f26, the more stopped down it is, the further distance you'll get in sharp resolution. And these are going to be very high resolution panoramics that we could print out poster size because we're not using a panoramic tool that downsamples them. Another vertical. This is the watchtower up above Sims Library. And I like the slight curvature you get from the lens when you do verticals that way. This one's interesting. It's actually really tough to do man-made objects. So you're not prevented from doing them. And students have definitely done good projects doing man-made objects before in their panoramics. But it is a little less forgiving because you have to line them up just perfectly. Whereas organic material is a little bit easier to line up and then processed very nicely. This is on top of Enchanted Rock. So you'll have the weekend to get these exposures. I hope we should have good weather this time of year. You know, it should be really bright, which is great for really stopped down apertures. But it should also be probably a little overcast, so you'll get a nice diffuse quality to the light. And even though there's almost nothing going on in this composition, the clouds and the slight curvature you get from the multiple exposures at such an elevation make it pretty interesting. I love this one. Just because the point of view it takes and how it stacks up middle ground, foreground, middle ground, background. Even though it's all in focus, your eye is able to kind of weave between those. Now this is the assignment where I've had a few students, 3 students so far in the 5 years of teaching this class here, where when they go to mat this for the midterm, at the matting store, someone asks to buy it. And they sell their prints. And I'm happy to help them make another print, right? And I tell them sell it for at least $50, right? And the reason is because we get to shoot our environment here, right? We're shooting things that people recognize and know. And we're hopefully shooting them with a lot of technical skill and artistry. But people like things that they recognize. This is the Japanese tea garden. And here are just some paths really close to here. Walking trails. You don't need to go far to find something really interesting. Again, the more man-made it is, the more difficult it is. Right. So how do we go about this? Well, you'll notice it's a little boring. My instructor demonstrations for this are all on campus because we're going to go out and we're going to shoot. And basically, we'll go out to our amphitheater and we'll take multiple exposures and then we'll seam them together and then we'll process them just to see how the process works. All right? And then your goal is to find somewhere more interesting to shoot and bring those exposures back next class. All right, so let's go do that.